Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to get the YouTube going here and we're going to rock and roll. I'm so excited about this conversation. All you got to do is drop hints on the internet about enhancing the inheritance, and Patti Durand gives you a call. Just getting the YouTube live going here. Good morning, everybody. Oh, it's working hard. It's like dial up this morning. See who we got here. Good morning, Alex Clark. Brett Jensen, Andre, Brian, Donald, Ed, Ernest. Good morning, Ernest. Oh, my YouTube live still going. Harry Siemens, good morning.
Hey, Harry
Eileen. Yeah.
and
I
Brett.
think
I know there's a few names in there I recognize. Absolutely.
I'm going to try one more time with YouTube Live, but if not, that's okay. Irma, Janet, Jerry, Joan, John, good morning. Lamar, Loretta, Lindsay. Oh, as soon as I start, it's going to start and then give me an echo, but that's okay. Oh, here's going Big Blue Bars going wild. Margaret, Maurice, Mervin. I don't know what to say about that. It's Ryan Hillstead. Good morning. This plays right into your wheelhouse. Here we go. No, I'm gonna. It's all muted, so we're good. Okay. Deep breath. I grew up the eldest son on a family farm on the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. I call it the borderlands because we had two time zones as a dad joke. But it turns out I was never going to be the one to take the farm into the future. And this session is about that journey, both for the ones still on the farm, but also for the ones that left. Three questions that can open a door to a conversation that you might never have had, but you certainly should be having. Or should you? That's one of the questions today. For the sake of the farm and for the sake of the family, welcome to the Three Questions You May Not Have Asked Yet live event. Love it. If you're watching on YouTube right now, smash that like button to show your appreciation for this content. Hit subscribe to get more conversations like this one and turn on your notifications for the channel so that you know when we're going live. We do this regularly at Growing the Future Productions, and it only gets better from here. My name is Dan Aberhart. I run Growing the Future Productions, excuse me, where we put the right people, we have the right people today, at the table for the conversations that matter to you and your farm going down through the generations. This morning, I'm joined by Patti Durand and Chris Corbett from BrightTrack. Patty's a family business advisor and the author of The Future Leader, and Chris is a non-farming sibling. That's not his only title. We don't want to be too stereotypical here or generic, but he is a non-farming sibling, one of the many things he does. Between the three of us, we've seen all sides of this conversation. Good morning, Patty. How are you doing
Good
there today?
morning. Delighted to be here.
It's going to be amazing. She said buckle up in the green room, so that's the kind of energy she's going to bring. And good morning, Chris, as well. You were from space, but you changed your background. You must have made it back from the Artemis 2 there.
Did make her back from Artemis. I was pretty excited about that in our preamble. Yeah, my space is my background, but yeah, no, I'm really excited about this conversation too. It's one of those unique positions, the eldest sibling on a farm that's not part of the farm. All kinds of neat things we're going to be able to chat about here
Yeah,
today.
it's going to be good. Yeah, and you guys are also a comedy duo. I should mention you do a little bit of stand up just for everybody who's looking for a laugh this morning, given the weather and where we're at this spring. But I just want to tell a little bit about my story if I could. I grew up on the farm in the 80s on the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, as I said, at a time when it wasn't really attractive to farm. It really wasn't encouraged because it didn't seem tenable. My dad always worked off the farm, but my brother was tenacious. He always was very handy. He loved to farm. He could grow a good crop really from day one, and he was going to farm no matter what. And I was a kid daydreaming about rock and roll, and they called it a trouble light after me because I always got in trouble when I was on the light because I was never listening as to what tools I should be bringing. I was dreaming about something, rock and roll or whatever it was. But today, that farm is a very big business, over 20,000 acres, and there's a lot of equity there. And kudos to my family. They've done a wonderful job of putting succession together. My father informed me at one point that succession planning is done. We're not in the planning stage anymore, but I think it's ongoing. I think Patty will continue to talk about that. And Chris has a story similar to mine. I think we both feel really fortunate about that, but I can see how things go sideways pretty quick with the kind of money that's involved. And something I heard the other day really resonates. Unspoken expectations become resentments. Okay. Unspoken expectations become resentments. And what is unspoken? That's what we're here to talk about. And I have to mention my sponsors, but by the end of this hour, you're going to have these 3 questions you can take to your kitchen table this spring, not a succession plan, not a legal document. 3 questions that could just open the door, and it was in the pre-work. So let's just mention we're live on Zoom. If we get some comments there, I'll address them. We're if you guys want to get into the Q&A in the chat, I got some surveys for you. This is all about the questions that you had. And Michael Muscovy, if you're on the call, you had a big question there when you got 9 siblings, and what do you do? How do you split that up? But please, this is for you. Put your questions into the Q&A, put your chat into the chat, and let's go. So a big shout out to Crop A Nutrition, our partners in soil health. We use these products on the farm. Amazing Saskatchewan manufacturer of soil health products. You can check them out at cropanutrition.com. Hammond Realty has been our partner on land topics, mergers and acquisitions, all that good stuff. We enjoy working with Tim and his team. A lot of depth there, and I believe they work in this space a little bit too with some of the succession planning around land. And GRIP, well, GRIPP, that's the way we communicate and avoid throwing wrenches at each other's head. I don't know, I should avoid talking about violent circumstances, Patty, on the show, but GRIP's the way you communicate on your phones with QR codes. And I put the link in the chat. You can get a free consultation with Tracy. And not last but not least, Bone Trail Originals, my good friend Jeff and his lovely wife Brittany and their family. They're making handmade stuff in the garage. If you want to get on the good side for Mother's Day, that plays into this conversation. I mean, why not butter them up? Butter mom up can't hurt to butter up with something from bonetrail.ca. Thank you for making this conversation possible. And of course, Bright Track. Check out Patty's book. I got the link in there, and I want to know very shortly, have you heard of Patty's book? Because she's written a conversation for this. It's called The Future Leader. And Patty, I'm going to let you take it away here now. I'm going to ask you, you saw something or you heard something in my last conversation. I think it was Build the Dream Team, and I kept dropping the old inheritance bombs there and stuff. That's kind of my inside dad joke or whatever I make to myself about enhancing my inheritance. But what did you hear? And what did you see? What prompted you, inspired you to give me a call and say, hey, we should talk about this conversation? Brett Jensen says he's got the book both in hard copy and Audible. He's reading and walking and listening and walking. Good on you. Patty, tell us what the inspiration was here.
Thank you. I was listening to that webinar or watching it, and through it in your commentary as you were going along and moderating, there was just little comments about being the sibling, the non-farming sibling, and what it includes or doesn't include, and some of just little bits of your emotion. And it wasn't inappropriate, but it was just kind of this undercurrent. And so right after that webinar, I FaceTimed you, which you were like, who does that? Someone who feels passionately about this topic is who does
Boundaries.
that. And I just said, I said, Dan, were you even conscious it was happening? And he's like, what are you talking about? And so we peel back a few layers, which is what I do. I spend time with farm families, with business families, peeling back the layers and like getting to the core of like what's actually going on. And I propose that this is a topic that I don't think that you're alone in having some feelings, having some opinions, having some desires that don't necessarily have a place where they can ever be safely expressed at all, considered. And it's a deeper topic that I spend a lot of time with people on. And so you heard me, and here we are.
Well, and I think we did touch a nerve because the response has been awesome. And Elaine Fraze is on the call, and she says, I give Patty's book to event planners. How do you like that one? I received your book from Gars when I was their fireside chat expert one day. So it's definitely making the circles. I wanted to share this poll. 40% have heard of this book, Patty. How do you feel about that? And 30% haven't, but the rest certainly are intrigued by what you offer.
This is a question I asked for, because this is the risk of, I would say, of promoting a product, of sending something out there, is that you are, as the salesperson, you're so immersed in it, you can't imagine people not having heard of it. But this this gives great evidence. We still have a lot of work to do, and having advocates like Brett and Elaine and that are promoting it, and GARs that are sending it on to other people on our behalf, um, it it will take all of us, and so I'm grateful.
Before we get to Chris's story, Elaine Fraze, thanks so much for being here. I know you can add a lot of. You should. We'll maybe bring you on at some point when we get through some of this, Elaine. But you're saying this topic is super important. Our survey of newsletter folks said siblings conversation is a tool they need. You can speak to that, Patty, and you can also illuminate us. Like, what is your overarching goal in terms of improving communications in this sphere?
Yeah, so I have this big, crazy, hairy, audacious goal, is what it would be called, that I envision a future in which Canadian farm families are looked to as an example of communication excellence,
That's
which,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I think is deeply optimistic, but I'm a hopeful kid. I also know this industry to be smart and caring and quick studies when something works. And so I'm always thinking about what tools can I put in your hands that you can do something with that is accessible and not overwhelming, because literally only they can do it. I want to support it, but they have to take the lead, and I believe it's possible.
More reviews coming in for the book. Margaret Rigetti said, listen to the audiobook with our next generation. Ooh, that'd be fun to listen with family on a road trip, and have given my written copy away to a friend who needed it. So I'm sure you've got many stories like that. Patty, what was the metric? How will you know when your goals reached? Just to expand on that a little bit. How will you know? Wake up one day and like, we did it. We climbed the mountain.
My phone stops ringing, when my email box stops getting messages that are like, we need help. How do I do this? What do we do? We know it's not going well. We're concerned about walking on thin ice, that in relationships and in communication. And so, yeah, ultimately. So is my goal realistic in my lifetime? I don't know. I'm going to try. And so, yeah, that's really the when we stop assuming that it won't go well would be a clue.
Love it. Well, it's good to have those big audacious hairy goals, isn't it? So thanks, Patty, for showing up today, like you always do, a ton of energy and insight. And Chris, you and I share this non-farming sibling thing going on. It's a little bit of a thing. I don't know if we always share that or not. I guess maybe I was alluding to it, and it's been funny for me because lots of folks maybe think I'm farming because of my close proximity to the farm. But you had a moment, I believe, when you were 16 years old. Your dad sat you down with all your siblings at the kitchen table and said, well, not everybody, I can't afford to pay all of you hired hands here. So somebody's going to have to lead. You had your license. So you're like, logically, that's kind of how you left the farm. I mean, can you give us some context on your situationship there?
Yeah, you bet. And thanks for the opportunity. It's just been, as I've been through this industry, 30 years in ag, chem rep, and then doing some grain marketing, and I'm, in the crop insurance business with Ag Guy 3, and just all these conversations you have with families. I began to realize how rare what had happened for me was, and how that not every family talks like that. So yeah, oldest of 5 kids, and yeah, that's exactly the story. And I honestly, to this day, am not sure why dad decided to do that. But it was all of us, the 7 of us at the table, having this conversation. And from that day on, about every 5 to 7 years, same thing. Sit us all down. We all know what's going on. Everybody knows how the will's going to work. Everybody knows where land's going, or what mom and dad's wishes are. And out of the siblings that are close to the farm. I mean, I'm up in Melfort, so the farm is just outside of Winnipeg, a little town called Rosser, just off the northwest corner.
Wow.
My youngest brother farms with his family, and the 3 other siblings, 2 are RCMP officers. My sister's a teacher, so all have proximity to the farm. My brothers are both working back in Manitoba, so their families are close. They can be at the farm anytime they want. My brother's on the farm is great about having them, getting his nephews and nieces out to help out, do things, get them involved. He wants them to know the story. But we all are quite content with how our place in that farm works. And for me, Dan, and I know that you and I've talked about this a little bit, it still feels to me it's very much my farm. Even though I'm not actively farming, I'm not, I'm 8 hours away. I get there when I can, and when I can, I drive stuff and try to break it. But
We call it the non-farm siblings bill. Yeah, it's just a price you got to pay every time they come home and drive something. It's a couple $1,000, but it's worth it.
I keep reminding my brother, you reset your expectations, right? Like I've never thrashed a soybean in my life until last fall. So we had some challenges. It was
It's performance
entertaining.
anxiety. You come back from the city and you're like, I got to show everybody how to do it. And kind of ends up with something ramming into the fence post. But that's my experience anyways.
Yeah, might be a little bit of mud in the header every once in a while, but that's
Kind of too close.
got to get it cleaning that thing out. But yeah, I honestly, when I reflect back on Dad's career on the farm, my grandfather died on us suddenly. And Dad had kind of had a career plan off the farm with Manitoba Hydro, was going to do that for a while. I always planned to come back to the farm, but then when Grandpa got sick and died, I think that was a bit of a wake up call. Like, I think there's a lot of challenges he faced that maybe consciously or subconsciously he was trying to alleviate those with us. And the cold hard fact that he couldn't afford to pay us all to work there, so we had to pull the trigger somewhere. And and my path led ag is all I knew, so that's where I ended up working was ag. I worked for farms in the area, and I drove a custom applicator, one of those big A2500s, like long before we had like computers and stuff. I was like acre meters and calculators, odometers, how many acres they go, and it was and
like being a pilot.
kind of was. Flood jet nozzles, no technology. It was way before then. So my path has ended up in ag, and I'm truly thankful for that. But I'm probably the most thankful for understanding from very early on how everything's going to work on the farm.
Good for you. And Patti, why do a lot of folks, we're not going to get into statistics today. We agreed upon that, pinky swear. But there's lots of folks that don't have this conversation. Obviously, Chris's family did, for better or for worse. It sounded like it turned out good. But why would anybody avoid this?
I think there's a few layers to it. Number one, I think it's culturally acceptable to keep plans private, secret, in terms of estate. And so historically, like kind of generationally, like my parents didn't tell and their parents didn't tell and their parent, that kind of repetition. And so like I remember sitting across from a farmer that I shared these 3 questions with him, because this is a script I developed a very long time ago and have used it with hundreds of families. And I shared it with this gentleman and I said, have you talked to your children about what their expectations are? And he said, you can do that? And I'm like, literally he believed you weren't allowed or weren't permitted. Like it literally never occurred to him. So that would be the first layer, is like never even occurred to them. That's not what we do. That's not the repetition. The other thing I would say is there's a lot of fear in the world. There's the expectation that the desires will be unreasonable or unexpected, specifically if it's not possible to be balanced. So if it's not possible to, whatever equal means, I always say equal is equal for about 5 seconds and fair is an opinion. So if we're seeking that, we're highly unlikely to achieve it. But if this doesn't feel reasonable amongst your heirs and you don't proactively talk about it, they're going to make it up. They're going to anticipate, they're going to perceive it. And so that fear of their response, parents just like, well, I won't be there anyway. So how do you imagine that's going to go?
Well, I love that nature abhors a vacuum, and obviously we're making up stories in the absence of hearing from those that have the facts or the truth. Elaine Fraser is saying, Chris, your parents should do a documentary short to encourage other farm parents. Do you think they'd be open to being YouTube stars or CBC?
Patty's laughing. She's met my parents. I love the idea, Elaine, but hard no.
Reality TV gone wrong. It's too much. It's too much, Elaine.
So that's another layer. There's another layer in there. So the number of people that I will say I have spoken to about this that absolutely have an experience, it's incredibly valuable. Amplifying it would be super helpful. Not a chance, right? It's deeply sensitive. It's fragile. It's fraught with minefields, including the ones we make up in our brain. I want to give tools to open.
Yeah, I think of
Yeah.
all the hurdles here,
Yeah.
like even just asking these questions and actually listening, not doing it as a token or like just totally disregarding immediately what they said, discounting it,
Totally.
diminishing it. But
Totally.
can you ask these questions and can you listen and can you internalize it and say, I might not even have to act on. What I love about this too is that it doesn't have to be financial. Like actually, it's a financial protection to that which provides generational wealth, the land, the farm, because there are downsides, and that's I became aware of that in the process that we went through. That this has to happen in such a way that everybody gets along for the benefit of the farm to go forward, or it might not. And you see that you likely see that all the time where the farm can't go ahead because of these kinds of squibble squabbles with the siblings.
Right. Estate litigation, they talk about it being the fastest growing area of law. Like there are ways
Really?
that people respond when you're gone. And it's not ideal, but I will say you have unexpected outcomes intercepting with grief, and it's very complex. So to back up the bus completely, why would you do this in the first place? I commit that your non-farming siblings or children are likely to have feelings about this, whether you ask for it or not. So how might you give it a platform? Well, the first step, and the risk is if whether someone read these questions or not, the risk is that they're like, I don't want to know the answer. I'm afraid of the answer. They're going to demand too much. They're going to ask for something that's not possible. But the first step is I am not giving you authority over this plan. I'm not saying what you say will happen, but I care to know how you feel. Set that table and then start asking the questions. And lo and behold, it asks your heirs to step into your shoes, which they are unlikely to do because as kids, we're like, well, my parents are going to let me know. They're going to take care of me. They always do. And we get, again, all these assumptions that do damage.
Well, let's
I
ask a
build
question of the audience here. And sorry, not to cut you off, Chris. We'll let you rock and roll
yeah.
here. But should non-farming siblings be included in succession conversations? Absolutely. It depends and not necessarily. And Patty, I'm going to ask you for your over under on what percentage say absolutely. How many of folks would say absolutely? But Chris, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to build on this whole thing about three questions, and Dan, you touched on it. Going through this process and saying, well, I asked the questions and I didn't get any results. Yeah, but did you listen to the answers? Because it sounds facetious, but I've seen it 1,000 times. Whether it's through the sales process or just these conversations with different families, people ask questions, but then they've already got the answer before they've asked the question, right? So listening to that answer is so critically important because you will
Well, we
hear
we
something
inherited
different.
let's be real. We inherited so many listening skills from our ancestors who came here and settled the land. They were expert listeners. They really had communication skills extraordinaire as they were plowing. They were
Some are
listening.
some are better than others, but it wouldn't be something they're known for. It's fair.
They're
Um,
silent
the
warriors of
so
the communication sphere. Go ahead.
the other thing that I would comment on is people may have perceived that they have asked these questions,
Right.
but part of what I would encourage is send these questions to your heirs ahead of time so they can percolate and digest and schedule a conversation because these are big brain, deep questions that they may
Mhm.
have never considered. They don't like to consider because it involves death. But it's like, no, like I really want to hear what you think. So if you are sincere about this, here's how set the table, give them the questions, and then come back and have that conversation. But then also be prepared to revisit it because lives change, needs change, expectations, desires, what they could be interested in. Again, we're not giving them control over it, but we care to hear their perspective so that they can be heard and part and feel like they're connected to what they emotionally often feel connected to.
Respecting and listening to your non-farming siblings is free. Uh, Litigation is not.
Right?
Just to go. Okay, here we go. This is a fun game, Patty.
Okay.
What percentage of folks would say today should non-farming siblings be included in succession conversations? Absolutely. What percentage?
So I feel like it's going to be biased because of who showed up and what we're trying to promote.
Fair. Well, that's all we got to work with. We could go out on the street and start asking people, but
That's true, true. So I'm gonna say we're gonna be over half, but I'm not sure how much.
you are smart as a whip. It's 59%. So
Yeah.
you nailed that. 33% said it depends, and 9% said not necessarily. And I think that's fair. And Elaine Fraze made the point. She's had the same experience as you, Patty. One farmer said he would never share his will, and maybe he just thought that was right. Like, we have to understand that I think 98% of people, except, extreme sociopathic deviants for whatever reason, became what they are. Most people think they're doing good, right? Like, everybody has good intentions, and it's like, well, you want to swat at a hornet's nest, honey, today, let's just break it open and talk about succession. Like, no, that might be the attitude, is like, let's not, break that seal. It's a private matter. It's private. That's my business, right?
Yes. Which is underneath that, the fear of the response.
Well, it's a good excuse not to have. But then your brain, like, we rationalize, well, no, I've talked to them. Well, they're fine. And they're not a bad kid. And they won't mind. And they got a nice house and car in the city. Don't even worry about them. But we should get into the questions. We're going to go one by one, I think, here. Or is
Sure.
there anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover before we actually give into the big reveal? Anybody that didn't do the pre-work? There's so much we could talk about here.
This
One
is
thing I want to
infinite.
say too, one thing I wanted to say too was, is there an element where we could have somebody like Elaine Fraze, who's smart and knowledgeable and spoken on stages and written books, that holds the bowl to pass it, like,
hmm
to say,
hmm
question number one, what do we have to do it ourselves? If we're the sort that just like to grunt, you know?
I certainly, I mean, and certainly that's work that I do as well. And so Elaine is a dear friend and peer in this industry. There's not a ton of us that do this type of work specifically in terms of creating a safe space in which to have important conversations. Because when people are feeling unsafe, they just stall and they never get there. I personally am working, I think about working myself out of a job. I want to give you the tools. Therefore, this is a script. Again, not that you have to read it verbatim, but make it your own. But here's how this might sound. You can do this, Dan. You
Mm.
can do this, Chris. You can do this, Elaine. All right. I'm always pitching and coaching to that end. That again, if we're going to be known for communication excellence, managing these important conversations that have some emotion attached to them is one of those skills. And so I want to lead in that direction, but certainly I support families regularly in this realm.
Well, and if you think about it, for all of the Netflix series that we've watched, me having personally gotten through Game of Thrones, hated the ending, but that's another episode. Or, all the sporting events that we watched, or all of the things that we've done with our time. Have we read a book? Have we read a book about parenting? Have we read a book about succession planning? Hint, hint, the future leader. Have we read a book about what it takes to be a good partner? Um, I'm still working on all that. So,
You and
and I
me
know,
both, friends.
yeah, exactly. We're all a work in progress. And I know for me, my brother's propensity, his proclivity, if you will, for having great people around him in a humble fashion, having an advisory board. I mean, when Dean Klippenstein explains to you what's going to go down, it's got a different flavor. So kudos to MNP and the work they do. And yeah, it's all important to have the right advisors. And your dream team that we built the other day, what is your technical term? The succession planner? Is that, or your life coach, or where do you fit in?
Yeah. So it's good question. I think so. I have dubbed myself, and I wouldn't say that I haven't seen it in anybody else's title, but I'm a strategic action planner. I
Ooh.
help people wherever they're stuck to unpack what is necessary to make important decisions. And I will tend towards action. So I want them to both feel the confidence and resolution, but also know what to do and what their path is. Because often that's part of it. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to ask. They don't know who to ask. And so they sit and they're feeling urgency. And so very frequently it is succession or transition related, but also there's conflict resolution issues. There's challenges about, do they have the wrong advisor at the table? Do they have something that they haven't been encountered? Whatever their barrier is, I meet them there.
Leave it to you, Patty, to make your title a verb. I love it. It's very action oriented. So it describes the energy. What's your title, Chris? What are you? Super cool non-farm sibling who, comes home and wrecks stuff now and then for productivity's
Yeah,
sake.
I often get the jack of all trades, master of none title for my ability to do a bunch of different things within Bright Track. I've been working with Patty and help her with the
Yeah.
book, and doing the family business improv that you alluded to earlier, and just helping her strategically trying to figure out where this goes. So we call her. She's the system at Bright Track Consulting, and I'm the chief catalyst, because part of my role is to make things happen, but catalysts can also stop things from happening. So I'm kind of guarding Patty's calendar. I'm like, okay, well, like we gotta sit back a little bit. We can't do it all for everybody, and so I've been in that role with her. And then I was laughing. I had the opportunity in September to spend 200 hours at Harvest on the farm, and I hadn't done that for a long time. And I was joking with mom and dad one night, 10:30, coming in, dragging my butt, going, I forgot how hard this is because I'm tired.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, and that's just one element of it now. There's so many systems on the farm and it's such teamwork and it's different than when I grew up. I'm going to launch this other poll. Have you had this conversation? This is the kind of the end of the polls before we get into your final takeaways after we go through the questions. But Elaine is asking Chris, curious how you create a sense of urgency as a catalyst. How do you create urgency, Chris?
How do I create urgency?
Do you need to create urgency with Patty, or do you need to slow her down?
So that's
like a catalyst here. Which end are we coming from?
Like I alluded to, right? Sometimes catalysts stop a reaction, right, from happening, and that's more where we see it. Like we look at what we're trying to build outside of just the one family at a time approach Patty's alluded to. Like, how do you get this message out to as many people as you can as quickly as you can? And that's where the book comes in. And Elaine knows this as better than probably anybody on this call about how hard it is reaching out to these families and how few of us do this work. So creating a sense of urgency, it's more exactly your point, Dan. I'm more trying to stop the urgent things from hitting Patty's plate. Patty could probably comment on
integrator to the visionary and the EOS system here.
Exactly.
So I think about strategic action planning from a catalyst perspective with families. The things that I do, number one, I limit the number of actions required. I can tell them 27 things they could be doing, but that's not going to actually create action. That actually paralyzes people. So I've researched a lot about what human nature is and what actually helps people move. I make sure that they have at least one action that they can complete within the week from our meeting. Mm-hmm. So they get a little shot of dopamine and keep going. I am less likely to be directive. Thou shall, thou should, you should do this, whatever. And be more like, consider this. How might we? What questions do you need to answer in order to get where you want to go? So I think about helping them to shape and empower them to do what needs to be done, because nobody cares about it like them. I care a lot. Nobody cares about it like them. So how might I?
Oh dear. You make me think of an attachment expert I was listening to last night talking about getting people off the dopamine onto the oxytocin, not Oxycontin. Oxytocin. Two different drugs. Two different drugs.
You think?
Okay, you did pretty good. Chris, I'm going to give this one to you. How many folks as a percentage would you say have had these conversations like this? Chris, what percentage of folks would say that they've had conversations like this?
Well, again, to cheat a little bit on Patty's back response, considering who's on the call, we're probably going to be north of 50% again. Would be a safe bet.
Oh, you guys, 57%. That's interesting, though. It would be fun to ask how many people feel that they're successful and that it's never done, but 30% said no and 3% said not sure I ever will. That's honest. I appreciate that. And then,
that's what I want to latch onto, though. You said that I've done it, but it's a continuum. So the number of times that I have spoken to families in which one individual said, yes, we had this important conversation, and the other people have literally no recollection of it, zero
Yeah,
recollection of it.
fair.
So when we have something that's difficult to say, it's like imprinted in our brain. It creates like this indelible memory that is so meaningful to us. We finally got the guts. We finally worked up the courage to do it. And the other person, sometimes it's just their stage of life. They were 17 when we had the conversation. They were 27 when we had the, whatever it is. This is something that is a practice to be revisited as opposed to a one-time event.
Well, and to that, I remember when we had our conversation, the farm was going gangbusters. It was making big bucks per acre every year. It was, I think, 22-ish, 23-ish when mom and dad and my brother laid down the law, so to speak. And now, hey, it's a very different circumstance. And that trajectory gets plotted out on a very different graph. We have 3 questions we got to get to. It's 10:35.
Yes.
The first one, do you want to share what it is? The question, I could share it. It's, do you have any expectations for your inheritance from me? Wow, that is super, super open-ended. Like, wow. Why?
It's why it requires thought.
Yeah.
Why they need to digest it a bit. But again, the preamble is always, I am not giving you authority, but I care to hear what you think.
Mm.
So that in the absence of that preamble,
wait a minute. You said you're not giving me authority. Clarify that, because it's like, why are you asking me then? If you're asking me, but I've got no power here, no control, why do I even want to bother, Patty?
I think it's because it is, if you tell me your perspective, perhaps there's a way I can honor it. If it's like critical that you get that 30 acres that all the kids used to go and play in the woods and camp overnight
Sure.
in the 80s, right? All of a sudden, well, yeah, we probably could make that happen. But it can't be known without it knowing. Or if you have particular financial expectations that you're depending upon, regardless of the outcome, it allows the parent to just understand and just say, hey, okay, yes, that's possible. No, that's not possible. Or yeah, that's a absolute consideration. So if it comes from the actual owner, I have a teammate of mine that used to say, people view their inheritance as how much their parents love them. So if that gets a chance to be expressed and can be truthed by the parent while they're still on the right side of the grass, as opposed to trying to interpret it in their absence, it gets ahead of whatever assumptions could have been damaging.
What if your inheritance is a snowblower that actually costs more to fix than it is to buy a new one? Because that's what I got this winter.
Wow, lucky.
Yeah, lucky. I went there and I was like, well, my dad gave it to me. That's how he shows love. I can't really turn it back in. I can't really, but I feel like there's, it's a tough question to ask too, because let's say the farm's worth 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 million bucks.
Yeah.
Well, what are your expectations, son or daughter? As long as it's free, we'll give you the brochure, but it's like, well,
Yeah.
I'd like 10 million bucks. I'd like a section of land. Like,
yeah.
oh, well, you know what? Guess the farm can't really afford that. And you haven't been on the,
Yeah.
wow.
But then again, it's about truthing it. So how do you imagine that will go in your absence? So then the farming child is responsible for communicating that in time of grief. Most often what I would hear from the non-farming siblings, and I mean, this is not everybody, but it's certainly common, is I just want to be, I just want to understand and feel like it's fair amongst my siblings. Again, that fairness is often a strong emotion of some balance there. And I always say that fair is the F word, because again, it's an opinion, but talk about it. Say, and you talk about worth 50 million bucks. It's not a bucket of cash. It has that value.
Not what?
And it has that value. And that actually is a really important part of truthing this as well. These are assets that are tools of a business that the business does not function without. So certainly we would like to have all of our heirs have some level of benefit, but here's why on paper, it will not be matching numbers. Talk that through. And if you're not comfortable to explain it, get, have some coaching or some support from an advisor to do so, or whatever facilitator could be helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's get ahead of that. Because if I promise you, when they're settling the estate, it will just be numbers on a page, and that doesn't really tell the story.
Well, you had another great question in there, and it was, what do you perceive as fair?
Yeah.
So Donald Larson had a comment here. I just want to unpack. I love the comments and the interaction. This is what these live events are for. Donald Larson said, "I have another side of this. In my past, a farmer neighbor passed away young. I was asked to come over and help them understand the will and the finances. I farmed as well and had some financial training. Excuse me. He had 3 sons and wife. None knew what was in the will or the finances. The truth is, I found out that the liabilities were double the assets, and that's if they sold the land. They had no idea. What of a bit of a surprise to them. I guess there's all kinds of reasons people wouldn't want to talk about things because not everybody.
Yeah.
There's some secrets out there.
Truly. And so I'm not saying to do damage. I'm not saying to go like a bull in a china shop and like dump it and really like open up this. What I'm saying is I think these people have feelings about it. They have grown up often in this business. They share the same last name as the corporation. Like there's so many common threads of belonging that they have been told their whole life. And so if they're never invited to that table and asked their opinion, that might be enough. Say, you know what, there isn't going to be a lot. We'll be able to do this functioning business, the farming well, I guess we'll get to the third question because there's 2 more layers yet.
Yeah, no, we'll get there. Chris Herbert, sorry, is saying it's only as valuable as what somebody will pay for it. So yeah, there's market value. There's also the
True.
farm's ability to pay it out. Just because there's $10 million in assets doesn't mean that that year it might have the ability to pay you any cash. And maybe that's where you got to talk,
Completely.
talk to the wealth
So
management,
that's
like Core
it's
Wealth or whatever. But
it's the truthing of that. So the way that I say it is that comparing the value of a farm to cash, it's not even apples and oranges, it's apples and elephants. It's not the same. So how can we reveal that and say that at an appropriate level for the need to know basis, but just get ahead of that so that the farming child is not left there to explain it in their absence when it appears that they're the main beneficiary.
Patricia Fink is seconding that point and segueing that point. We also have to remember when it comes to inheritance, fair does not mean equal.
Truly.
But what
We
does fair mean to you?
Well, and that's the question, really. What were we going to say, Chris?
I just said we've all in this industry seen the tragedies that can happen in families when this isn't discussed until after the funeral. And then expectations are wildly out of sync with what's actually, able to happen. And then we have families ripping themselves apart. And it doesn't have to be that way. So part of this question, when you think about, do I really want to ask this? Well, asking it today, as Patti points out, is way better than not having that conversation until you're not around to help people understand.
Yeah. No, that's well said, Chris. Thank you. Elaine is saying Patty's approach is wise and empathetic. There is an intent of compassion and desire to discover intent. Donald Larson was saying that they should have discussed the debt. They should have discussed the debt, and how many things go on to discuss that should be discussed out there for sure. Lots to unpack here, but let's keep going. Question 2. I love this one. Are there any specific items that are meaningful to you and you would like to inherit? What is this all about, Patti?
So it goes to the fact that the things that are actually meaningful are often almost like cheap, priceless, or like there's no cost, right?
Yeah.
So and there are things that like that the parents couldn't have guessed. So I had one family, I have one family I can think of it that I went one of the errors that I would love grandma's tea set, and the mom's like, you can have it. I'm tired of dusting it here. Like, so talk about getting inheritance early, but the really meaningful things often really don't have a price tag. So my dad passed away over 30 years ago. I have his cribbage board. I don't know if you could sell it for 50 cents at a garage sale, but I'm going to tell you it is the most valuable connection I have to him.
Right.
So those things. I have one family, all 5 kids want the same blanket. oh, well, they came back. What are we supposed to do, Patty? I said, have a custody arrangement, cut it up and make shadow boxes. I don't know, but now you know that this is a common desire. Talk about it. Imagine.
Can it be the house in Arizona?
Yes, but that actually goes to this truth. This process is one of truthing.
Mhm.
Here's what's possible. Here's what's not possible. Here's why. It opens that.
But is it a negotiation? What happens when someone says, well, yeah, no, I'll take you know, Elaine saying here, there's the land where we got engaged and one non-farming siblings, and the parents are shocked. But it's probably the sentimental value, not the balance sheet. And yet,
Yes,
oops, like that's a big one. Whoops, opened a can of worms there.
totally. Totally.
Eileen Torper saying, have also heard that when the non-farming sibling receives cash, there can be resentment as well. Seems no perfect answer other than to communicate and ensure everyone knows the plan and agrees to the plan. If not, deal with it while you can. This is something I learned from my brother early on, having employees. You can give them things that you might think have value,
Hmm.
but have no value to them. And if you don't ask your employees or your teammates what actually matters to you or your non-farming siblings, you could mistakenly give them a bunch like the things that maybe he doesn't want the you know John Deere tractor. You value it, but it's
Totally.
nothing to them. They can't do nothing with
Well, and I would say there's many, many wills in which the farming child is responsible for creating the cash flow that did not exist during the time of the farm. So you are going to you're going to get the farm, but you're going to be required to give cash to your siblings for a certain period of time, which is lovely, except it wasn't possible while the parents were alive. So how is it possible in your absence? Like what changed in your business to actually make this possible? Again, not talking about it ahead of time creates flaws and vulnerabilities. And it might seem fair, but is it reasonable? It might seem balanced, but is it possible? So just digging into those things. I also think about inheriting a farm and inheriting cash. You get a bucket of risk with that farm.
yeah.
Cash is tax-free inheritance. So what is reasonable? Um, Dig into that a little bit and reflect.
Well,
That's a great
and it
example of our
looks
case too,
great on the
Dan.
outside.
Right?
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
As a great example from our side too. Initially, we were all getting land in the will,
Yeah.
and my sister's a teacher. She's like, "Why would I want land?" And even the rest of us who could see clearly that my youngest brother was the farmer, like, this makes no sense. Like, I don't want that 100-acre piece because what, like, Scott's going to need it, right? So why would we do this? But mom and dad shared with us that it was their opinion that until such time as they knew for sure that somebody was going to be farming, that's how they wanted it to be split up. And we were all under the understanding was that if we did get the land, we would rent it or sell it back to our, farming brother at reasonable
Right.
levels. Going rate. We weren't going to try and extort him to use use a phrase, but
Remember
and
that time
eventually
he beat you up on
eventually
the
they changed it.
bus? Yeah.
But eventually that changed, right? Eventually they like Patty talks about all the time. It's an ongoing process. This isn't a one and done. So we all knew that sometime it was going to change, and eventually that did. So now that land moves to the farming sibling. So those have those conversations. I can't believe how fortunate we were to be able to understand all this as early on as we did.
Yeah. Well, and what a blessing to be able to come back to the farm and spend some time there. And that's what Janelle Kuntz is saying. I just always want myself and my kid and any future grandkids to have access to the farm. No one lives on our farm for lack of water, but the biggest concern is what happens if something happened to my farming brother. And I would like to say too, the kind of the spiritual and the psychological connection to the farm isn't for me what it once was, because it's now a business. It's now my brother and his wife's home, and there's not the same space. I used to run the hills and play in the woods, like you said, Patty. We used to play war with the cousins and all the pets and everything. It was wonderful growing up, but I actually feel closer now to the home in Arizona because we share more family times down there, and that's a place I can kind of go and rest. Whereas let's face it, you go to the farm, it's a big modern business. It's a zoo. The team's coming and going, equipment's running all around. It's transformed. It doesn't look like anything like it used to be. So I still, and that's, I guess, why I was saying I got a big tattoo of the legal land location on my sleeve at 50. But that's kind of me keeping that connection. And that's where my ashes are going to go. If they read my will, that I want to be flown over. Well, but you know what, the flow, you can just throw me or whatever. I don't care. Put my ashes in the creek. But it's not the same it's a different thing. But at the same time, it's always a location on planet Earth that will have special connotations and feelings to it. But I think that alters over time as it becomes a big business. Do you guys resonate with that?
Completely. And yeah, it's about coming back to the table and oh my gosh. So as you're talking, there was another post here that I think is really
Hmm.
really pokes a hole, and it kind of goes to the third question. So mom and dad own the farm, and it's theirs to do with whatever they like. And so parents are not indebted to their children. Perhaps it's the other way around. I couldn't agree more. But people have different perspectives. So it's about opening that conversation and saying, what do you expect to inherit? And maybe the answer is, well, you should lower your expectations.
Wow. Okay. Well, you come over and you say that.
I will, but that's the thing is wherever they are on the spectrum of over expecting or under expecting. I will say one of my favorite stories of this particular script is the dad who had several children, a large family, and all had spouses. And he said, "Well, I'm comfortable to share this script with my kids, but I don't want the in-laws to vocalize anything."
Mhm.
And I said, "Well, how do you propose that's going to go? How are you going to enforce that request?" And he said, "I'm not." And I'm like, "Okay." So he sent it to the kids, and one of the sons-in-law responded, what do you expect to inherit? I would like access to see the photos of you enjoying your retirement.
Mm.
There are a lot of people who are caring and loving and are not pulling up to the trough. There are some that are, but in either case, just ask. And then you can actually address it and truth it, clarify it. Here's what's possible, here's what's not possible. Some parents feel quite impactful that they really want to leave some type of inheritance for all of their children. Others want to, spend every last penny while they're alive. That's theirs. They get to choose. But having heirs with a very valuable asset and not talking about it at all doesn't do a service to the sibling that is in the business or the siblings that are outside of it. This is an opportunity.
I'm just reflecting on how humble and gracious I am, as a non-farming sibling. Chris, I, I'm blown away by my level of
So compassion. So giving.
giving. It's good, yeah, and what it can be wonderful. And it always seemed like it should come first, those relationships, because you're not going to take all that land with you, and all that stuff with you. But
Yeah.
at the end, you will think of the connections that you had with the people that you most treasure for the time that you had. And for a lot of us, we know the numbers. We're getting to that point where you might not always be able to call up your mom and dad anymore. They might not be. They're not going to be there forever, and that's hard to reconcile. But you sure hope there's not a lot of loose, ugly ends when that hits the fan, because that's just the reality. So Elaine Fraser is saying some siblings just want the farm to succeed. Absolutely. I think Jen and I feel that way. And the residue of the estate to them is a bonus, not an expectation. Absolutely. And I think we all grow up too having a sense of, well, if we didn't earn it, what is the value? Like, why would I want something that I'm not entitled to? Or like, it would be a bit of a character flaw to be entitled, and yet we don't know how people can get slighted or disrespected in a way that makes them combative. That we can't define that for others. And when it comes to
Truly.
fighting, we know people will fight. They'll get their claws out. It's just a fact. Um,
If you're afraid to share with your kids, because I would say this question, actually, we talk about non-farming siblings, but this is actually for all your kids, all of your heirs. Ask them this question. If you're afraid of the answer, Reflect on that.
Take a look at yourself. Played phrases saying,
Okay, question 3 matters. We got to get there.
no, I'm terrible here. I'm taking too long. Question 3, such and such is committed to being the operating successor. How do you feel about that?
Yes. So, whichever child or children, they are the operating successor, they will need ownership or access to these farm assets. So they will either be purchasing or be gifted it in their lifetime. How do you feel about it? This is what gets the non-farming siblings and actually the farming sibling to step into your shoes as a parent, to understand how deeply complex and nuanced this is and why it's hard.
I love it. This is such a wild talk. I feel like yeah, we could do a big long series on this. What was your biggest takeaway today? We are coming to the end. It is getting to be seating time. This webinar is recorded. It's actually live on YouTube right now. Thank you, Elaine, for saying this has been a fantastic and very practical conversation. And God bless you and all the work that you do as well. She said that she loves your phrase, Patti, the truthing process. And Elaine, we'll have to do one of these one day too. Janelle Kuhn said, I like that train of thought, Dan. I'll make sure to promote that memories can happen anywhere. That makes sense. So let's get the biggest takeaways from everybody. We're just gonna let this come in here. Is there anything that I didn't cover that's burning for you two that you wanted to share? Anything that we might have missed that you wanted to get the message across? And I love that if you go read this book, if you read this book or you talk to Patti or Chris or Elaine or get the team around you, you're gonna be so far ahead and you sleep better at night, right?
Yeah.
Patti, what did you want to share at the end here? Alex Clark saying, thanks so much, Patti and Chris. You always have such great questions to create different conversations and thought processes. Thanks, Alex. Patti, what's on your heart here to wrap us up a bit here?
I just think we have this opportunity to shine a light on something. And that's actually where Bright Track comes from, is that people, my clients, my listeners tell me that I shine a light on possibilities. This is not something to be forced to, but recognize that this is an opportunity. And I think often you can do this, only you can do this. How might I support you? And that's where the script comes from, is often people don't have the words. And so I want to put some words that are accessible and real.
Amazing. Well, I love the questions that you ask. Chris, what did you take away? What was your biggest takeaway as a non-farming sibling here today?
Well, for me, it's about, starting this conversation early. We talk about with Bright Track, we talk about all the time, if the best time to start these conversations is, was yesterday, right? Second best time is today. If you're not there, you got to be kidding. Like you're there, so start. But just start talking. And it doesn't have to be hard, right? You don't have to start with the big, inheritance questions right off the bat. You just start opening that communication up. And Patti's, one of her favorite lines that I use a lot when I'm talking about the future leader is she, and we at Bright Track are trying to hold successors capable, because they are. So let's give them the tools to make something happen.
Say that again. Hold successors capable. Can you tell me more?
Successors capable.
Tell me.
I'll let Patti dig into it. That's her line. I just love it.
Tell me, Patti.
We spend a lot of time in our world with successors telling them to work hard and wait. That's been the long-term pattern. Work hard and wait. And I know that they are capable of a lot, and I want to hold them capable. I want to put good tools in their hand and motivational perspectives and mindsets that allow them to engage with their families sooner than later.
Such an optimist. I love it. I'm going to share the results here. And this went somewhere. I can never see where these silly things go. They go somewhere here. We did have another comment. Oh man, I can't seem to find that. Or does it show up somewhere else? We did have a final comment here from Jocelyn Freeman. View details. That's what I have to do. And then it opens up here. I want to share this. But yeah, Jocelyn Freeman, a question I want to ask is, what are you not willing to lose over this? Either one of you want to comment on that?
So I think each person can ask themselves that question. And my response is, have you put relationships on your balance sheet? And how are you perceiving it? Are they assets or liabilities?
Hmm. Are you seeing this screen now?
Yes.
Are you?
Folks put on here? Great. So Lisa J said, fair does not always mean equal. Lean into the discomfort and ask the questions. True colors and intentions will come out, and it's only for the better. Lisa, thank you. BM1 Parker says, truthing process, continuous, not once and done. Eileen Torper says, communicate and ask the hard questions while you can. Brett jmav at gmail.com. It will be discussed. Will you do it before or when it's too late? Damn. That's hit home.
Goosebumps.
That's a great takeaway. Hepting, the wording of the three questions is critical. Amen. Jones Inc. Communication is key. Ask, listen, and truth it. Communication. Elaine Phrase is saying conversations are necessary to share perspective and get clarity of expectations for family harmonies in a successful process. It's ongoing.
Dan, listen, this chat. Tina Folsom, I came to this thinking I don't want to involve our non-farming children, but I've changed my mind to start having these hard conversations with them.
That's amazing. That's great. That is incredible to hear. Ryan at corewealth.com. Our clients need good advisors to be part of the conversation. Yes, it's a critical thing. This is an extremely complex matter that can impact generations. You guys are doing awesome work at Core Wealth. Thanks for coming on. And JD Freeman, if you are afraid of the answer, that is something to ask yourself in the middle of the night when you're lying awake looking at the ceiling. Loretta George, no answer. Patricia Fink said discussion is important. Dieter Schwartz says ongoing communication with all parties is vital. Ed Perry says important to have the conversation. And yeah, that's pretty amazing, don't you think? That's pretty cool. I think we've had a
This is a mission.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for this platform to amplify it.
Thank you. Thank you, all the sponsors. Thank you to the people that attend. It is my honor and privilege, and it's a lot of fun. I feel like we need to do this more. And yeah, Terry Unger is saying, how young is too young to include non-farming siblings?
So I have a quick short answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like trust your judgment. There's age appropriate conversations. I would say that language around if you are interested in participating in this, those doors are open, but it's not a given, is one way that I think about it in the long run. In terms of inheritance, I think probably like we're talking 15 plus at minimum. And but you know your family. And I will say kids are smarter than we give them credit for. So if we think we're protecting them, is that actually true?
Yeah, my siblings are 8, 9 years old, the youngest ones. So that might have been a little soon, but the conversation just started changing as they got older. But that's when they started, like 9 years old at that table.
Might be a good thing to crack open while you're playing the farming game. Just a suggestion. But anyhow, great conversation. I'm sure we'll have more in the future. Any final words? So first time on Growing the Future platform. It was super fun, and we should do it at Convergence too.
This is a great beginning, and yeah, buckle up. We've only begun.
Thanks so much, Chris.
No, just great to be here, Dan, and thanks for hosting and taking the opportunity to chat with us. It was great to be able to share some of our stories and as Patty says, see where we can take this thing.
I think we should have an episode of Who's Wrecked More. People would probably tune in for that one.
Oh yeah, there'll be a ton of people tuning in for that.
Bring photos as evidence. bring your farming siblings so they can verify the dollar's damage. All right, everybody, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you. Thursday, we are talking about should you be buying used iron or not? And I have two folks who have 65 years of experience between them from Steffes Auctioneers, the incredible, the indelible, the legendary Jason LeBlanc. I think you know him. And then Scott Steffes himself. So I'm really excited about revisiting the equipment conversation. I sold John Deere for 13 years. So I sold Elaine Phrase's husband, Wes, who I must say is quite the negotiator, a sprayer back in the day. That's how great a salesman I was. I don't know if Wes has still got it or not, but that's how I got to know them originally. But thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you in the funny pages. Take care. Thanks. Bye for now.